Welcome back, CSC230, to part 3 of EX14, working with HTML, CSS JavaScript, and we're changing the seasons with buttons. And this is our finished example here, and basically the way it's going to work, I took out those white outlines. If you click on these, they will change the seasons. Now, one thing that'll come up is it may take a little longer to load the image, so we're going to do something called preloading so the image loads a little sooner. But you might see a little delay in that, but we'll deal with that as we go. But this is what we want kind of as a finished product here, at least just to start this kind of JavaScript thing. We could eventually have this so random images show up on refresh, so we're not actually clicking buttons there or whatever. But we're going to do this first, and I'll show you how to use variables, and we can eventually use an array, which is on a list. We can have random images show up. So lots of things we could do here, but we'll keep it simple for now. So I'll go back into here, and I'm going to get rid of all this stuff that I put in just to make sure it was working, because I didn't want to do too much trial and error. And one thing I did do that I didn't do the first time around, I'm going to call this an ID instead of a class for the header. I know we do that for styling purposes. I mean, we could even just do both. You could even have class equals pick as well. You know, you could have two there. That might be easier. That way you're not changing it. But we'll have a header class equals pick, but we'll also have an ID equals pick, just like we did for these, so that if we want to style the header, we can use the class, and if we want to contact it, we can use the JavaScript. Now, you can certainly style an ID. There's no problem with doing that, but this way we're keeping things separate a little bit for their purposes. So that's still going to have a class, but we're also adding an ID, so we could use the get element by ID because that's easy to use. All right, what we're going to do again here, let me refresh this, is we're basically going to have it so we click on this to change an image. That means it's going to rewrite the HTML. So we have to look at our HTML. And I think there's one other thing I changed here. I put this under the button class, so we can do this at some point, but well, let me get rid of this just so we know. But I did it so the pointer looked like a link finger, like it would when there's a hyperlink instead of just an arrow on it. So we'll put that in later, I guess. So what we're going to do now is just go to our JavaScript, and I'll get rid of all this stuff, all this cool stuff you're going to put in there, but most of it's copy and paste, so that should be easy. What we're going to do is basically kind of document our images. Now here's an image, and we're going to be replacing the image, so that means we're going to be replacing this tag, this image tag. So we're going to be replacing this. So I'm going to copy that whole tag, and we're going to use that, and it's actually going to be in quotes so that it treats it like text. So it kind of plugs it in there. We can use inner HTML. So we're going to go here, and we're going to make a variable, and I'll call my first one, I'll put a const as kind of the keyword for variable. I'll put const, and I'll use sp equals, and then in quotes, actually I'm going to use a single quote because when I paste it in there, I have double quotes inside here because you always want to alternate your quotes. So if you have double quotes in here, I'm going to use single quotes outside here, and I'll put a semicolon. And then you can see what I'm going to do here. I'm going to make 3 more. So I'll just copy it, copy, paste, and then I'll call this one SU, I'll call this one FA, I'll call this one WI for spring, summer, fall, and winter. And then I'll make sure I use the proper file names. This was called summer, this was called fall. If you called it autumn, make sure you're calling it autumn. If you spelled it wrong, if you use a capital letter, do all that. That's why I always use lowercase. And I'll have this one called winter. And then even my alt, I'll change these. I'll make this summer, fall, and then winter. So everything's set up here. So these variables that we just made represent this string of text, which is actually HTML, which is actually a string with an HTML tag inside it. That's the way we can just plug it into our page. So we're going to use that. So the way this works, I mean, you could even do this. You could start document. Now hopefully this works okay. Document dot, and we're going to do get element by ID because that's the easiest one to use. And then the ID we're going to use, we now made a pick ID. So I'll use single quotes here, and I'll put pick. And then we're going to use the dot inner HTML and then equals. Now this way we can just put the variable in there, and actually it won't be in quotes. Strings are in quotes, so no quotes there. It's just going to be Let's do the next one, summer, SU, and I'll put a semicolon. So what's going to happen now, actually, if we run the page, it's going to put the summer pick in there. So if I hit run and I reload this, it puts the summer pick in there because it's already running it. It's already doing this. Now we're going to make a function and a listener. So let's put this in a function. So I'll just hit enter here, and I'll make function space, and I'll put change, and I'll just put SU, and parentheses, and then the curly braces. Now this is outside of here now, so I want to make it inside of here. So I'll just cut this, put it in here. Okay, so that's what it's going to look like. That's the function, change SU. So this function is going to change the pick to SU. It's going to get the variable SU, which represents this, and put it in there. Now, we don't have a button doing that yet. Now, we could just run the function. If we just went down here and just put change SU, that would run the function. I think we put a semicolon here. If we just did that, that would run the function. It should make it summer. So if I refresh it, I should still see summer. And there it is. See, it's taking a little time to load because these images are bigger. And now none of these things work right now. You see they're becoming text when they're on there. We're going to change these things so they have a pointer. But that's working right now. But what we're also going to do is get rid of that, and we're going to do document dot. Now, I don't know why this doesn't work after the function. It's bizarre that it's not working. It was working up here. Unless I need to close this up or something. There's some issue once I do this, unless I need to do it before. Let me see if I do it here. Document. See, it's not working anymore, so it's still a little sketchy here with our code. But at least we kind of know what we're doing now. So we're going to do get element by. Just remember, it's always camel case, so the middle word, whatever the next word is always capitalized. And ID is not a capital D; it's a small d. And now it's going to be button, because remember we have a button ID and a button class. And actually this button is going to be button underscore SU, because it's going to be doing that. If you're not sure, go here and check out your button. So remember we use these IDs that look like that have underscore and then that after it. You could have used camel case and did SP with a capital S or anything like that, but we're going to do that. And then we're going to do add event listener, and again, which is not coming up, so we'll just have to remember to type it correctly, listener. And remember, this does the event in quotes and then the function. So we're going to just put quotes here and put click, and then after that we're going to put a comma, and then we're going to put the function, which is this. And we don't use the curly braces. Remember from the previous exercise, we don't use the curly braces, and then we'll put a semicolon. So what should happen here when we run this is when we click on this button, the SU button, it should change the pick to summer. And let's see if that works. All right, there's the spring pick. Here's summer, and it's working. Okay, there's a little delay there, so we'll deal with that. And I even looked up preloading. There's different ways to do this. Here's one. Preload. This is the simplest one where you could just do a link preload. You put that in your head tag and just preload the images, although then the page takes a little longer to load, but then your other images load faster. But for now, let's just make sure this works. Also, remember, I took off my border here for my CSS. So my button, if I go to button, I took off the border. I got rid of that white border, but I could also do something here called cursor and colon, and I'll type pointer. That's coming up. And a semicolon. So it looks like a pointer when it goes over that button class. And it'll just look better when we do that. So if I go back here and refresh, now you're seeing that kind of link button, almost like it's a hyperlink. So that's making the summer. So once you do that, the rest is pretty easy. Not that easy, you just have to be careful. I'll move this up here and kind of keep these together. So this is the change summer. And you could kind of copy this and then do the next one, which is fall, and just follow the same process. FA, and the pick is the same. The variable is FA because that's this one. That's going to put in that pick. And then this is going to be FA because it's that new function name, change FA. And then the button is also going to be button FA. And I'm so confident that that's going to work. I'll do the next one, and I'll do the winter, and then we could go back and we'll put the spring first. So they're in order. There's winter. And then this is WI. And then this is change WI. And then this is button WI. So make sure everything's okay. The pick stays the same every time because there's only one pick that's changing. So the function matches up. The button, we're getting the right button. We're getting the right variable. We have summer, fall, winter, summer, fall, winter, and then we have summer, fall, winter. So everything looks okay. I could do the spring right away if I want to throw that one in here. I'll just go here and put my spring one in here. Get rid of any extra space. And this one is going to be SP, because this will make it go back if we change them to the other one. So SP, and change SP, SP, and then this is going to be change SP. So it's just a matter of making sure you update everything. And this is SP. So now we have our event listeners for the button, and we have our function, which is getting called and run, which is, well, our function is defined here, and then our event listener is using this event, the click event, and then calling that function here. And it's running on that ID, this ID, that ID, and then the winter ID. And it's changing the inner HTML of pick, and the inner HTML that's changing is going to be this stuff. And we made it variables so we don't have to rewrite all this stuff after here. We could have put equals and put all these things in quotes, but that just gets confusing and it'll break on different lines, so that's why we're making variables here. Not only that, we could eventually put our variables into an array and do kind of random images or something like that, so we can kind of pull them out of a list or an array if we wanted to. But for now, hopefully this works. We'll hit run here just because we have a whole bunch of JavaScript. Check all our semicolons, make sure all our semicolons are working okay. And let's refresh this. Sometimes it takes a little time to refresh. Let's go to summer, fall, winter, spring, summer, fall. And like I said, there's a little preloading thing you could use. I'll just copy this. I just got this from, well, you could just look at it. It's not that hard to do. It would be in your head tag, which would be up here. And I don't know if it really helped that much, but I'll paste this. And it's link rel equals preload. So instead of style sheet, it's preload. Then they do as image, and then it's just ref is your image. So the only thing different between your style sheet one is it has as in here, and the ref is just going to be your images, which you can really just copy from here. I'll copy this one, and I don't know if I'd even need to preload spring because that's on my page, but I'm going to put this in here, and make sure you put the IMG, and then I'm going to do all four. And I'll see if this helps a little. Again, we're doing it through a web IDE, so we have that issue as well. I'm doing this during the day, so I don't know how many people are on here, but that way I'll do summer. See, this is where it's good to make sure you keep your names so they make sense and to you, and they're simple and they're lowercase, all that kind of stuff. Winter, and you don't have to change any of this stuff. So this should preload them. I don't know if it's going to help a lot. Sometimes it takes longer for the page to load. Okay, let's see how this works. Summer, fall, winter. See, it was taking me longer before, but there could be more people working on Replit right now, and that's okay. So that's all we want to do for this exercise. We're going to do more with JavaScript, and obviously try to get into some framework JavaScript if we can, but I wanted to make sure we kind of worked with regular JavaScript. We do some of this in the CSC130 class with Show Hide Patrick. It's not doing a whole lot different than Show Hide Patrick and showing the SpongeBob characters, but instead we're using farm scenes here, but we're throwing in some more HTML and CSS. So this is extra stuff we're doing here. This preload is just to help all these images load so they don't have a delay when you go to click on them. And again, our buttons, we used line items or list items in an unordered list, and we gave them classes so that if we wanted to style them, we can, and we gave them unique ID names so we could contact them through JavaScript. We also did the same with header. It has a class to style it. We didn't really style it yet. And it has an ID pick that we can also identify it to use JavaScript. And let's just look at our styles real quick. We reset our margin padding, body, we just kind of centered it, put a background color, gave a width, so everything's kind of centered in the middle. Nav has a background color, text align center, just centered our buttons. There's other ways to do that. We put in a margin top -4 pixels because we had a little gap in there. Let me get rid of this so it looks nice. Our buttons had a whole bunch of declarations in here. Inline block, put it on one line from being stacked. It also takes away the bullet. And we made the text white, font family sans serif. We gave some padding so that gives room around the text. And font size, we made it a little bigger. Background color, we changed the background color so it's a little different from the nav bar. We put cursor pointer so we see that link finger on there. And we even put a hover state on this so that we can look a little lighter when we hover over it. So when we do this, it looks a little nicer. Again, I just kind of made this up on the fly, but that's okay. Hopefully we got to a bunch of things here with JavaScript. Hey, and by the way, a quick update to remove the spaces between these buttons. I looked it up, and I guess it's just because of the way the lines are set up. We have extra space here. Even though they're on separate lines, I guess it creates an extra space between those. So you can actually just backspace these, even though it doesn't look as nice. If you backspace the line items and remove any space between them, even the ones we did by putting them on a separate line, that should take care of it, even though, like I said, it doesn't look nice and it doesn't seem like there's actual space there. If we go in here and refresh it, that gets rid of the space. So just wanted to point that out. Again, JavaScript, we basically made 4 variables that represent the image source tag, really, and we put that in a quote. We use single quotes because we have double quotes in here. You could certainly have double quotes on the outside and single quotes in there. If you knew what you were going to do, you could use that. I use single quotes in here, and we basically have 4 function definitions and 4 event listeners for each button to actually call the function and run it. So that wasn't that hard in the end. Hopefully it reviewed some things. If you have any questions, let me know. If you have any problems, check all your semicolons, check that you have things that are matching up, all that. There's a lot of troubleshooting here with this. Sometimes the JavaScript is working well with the autocomplete. Sometimes I was having some issues with it, but I think that's okay. It's a fairly simple exercise, I guess. We're not doing anything really crazy yet as far as just changing images. We didn't do a whole lot on the other one other than just change colors and things like that, but we're just kind of moving with JavaScript. I'm not sure if people's programming background, JavaScript is more like a programming language, so we want to keep it simple in the beginning. So that's it. When you're done, just let me know in your comment that it's done, because I'll see your link there. So make sure that you link up your root. We did this one in CSC230, so we kind of keep in our sequence of linking to different things, even though we did exercise 13 and 13b in a separate repel. I thought that would be easier since it sets up some of our JavaScript. But here we're going back doing some things manually, so hopefully you do okay with this. Probably takes a little bit longer. So that's exercise 14, working with the 4 seasons.